Hello, my name is Nobbe. Today's date is Wednesday, March 27th, 2019. I'm interviewing Dr. Patricia Lang on the Ball State campus as part of the Ball State University Honors College Oral History Project. Thank you, Dr. Lang, for agreeing to participate in this effort with which we're conducting during the Honors College's 60th anniversary year. I'd like to begin by asking you where and when you were born.
Okay. Do I really have to tell you that? 1954 in Rhode Island on a Navy base called Quonset Point.
And what were you there for?
My father was a career Navy person.
Okay. And what was your mother?
She was a housewife and a seamstress.
Okay. And then were you moving around a lot as a child then?
Well, I was born later in my parents' life, so we just moved to Texas and then back to Kentucky, where I remember going to school for the first time.
What was that like? If you remember.
Yeah, going to school or growing
Either
up
or,
there.
yeah.
Well, the school was right across the street, and I was always the first one at school, and I don't know, I got in trouble once for banging making noise. I thought I was making a musical instrument or something. It sounded musical to me, and then so I got spanked. I remember that. So that was the days when the teacher could spank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And were you in Kentucky for a while?
My father retired from the Navy, and then we moved to Richmond, Indiana, which is to Liberty, Indiana, because he worked in Richmond, and that's about an hour and a half, 2 hours south of here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you remember what age or what grade you went to?
Yeah,
then?
I was in second grade when we moved.
Okay.
And then we grew up there.
And that was a pretty small town, right?
It's a pretty small town.
What was it like in that atmosphere?
Oh, I love it. It's a great place to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still go to class reunions, and by the way, it's customary if you come from Liberty to even crash other people's class reunions. I mean, because you know everybody. So we all meet in the gym cafeteria, and the Lions Club makes us dinner. And so you see everybody who's being honored, and parents of people that you knew, and neighbors, and so it's like almost everybody's there at the reunion.
I had a gym cafeteria too, so I know how that one goes.
Yeah.
So what was your high school like?
Well, small, a class of 80 for my class, and we were the last class of that high school before, last graduating class before it merged.
Okay, what was it before and what was it after?
It was called Short High School, and now it's Union County High.
Okay.
So, yeah, nice people, nice folks.
Did you have a favorite subject?
Yeah, math.
Yeah.
It was math.
Was there a professor or a teacher that made you like that subject?
Not really. It was just that I liked it. Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Unfortunately, our junior class, or sophomore class was so rowdy that we retired one of the teachers. You know, we weren't very nice to him.
We had that for one of ours too.
The geometry teacher. I like geometry, but we were tough on him.
And then you graduated in what year?
72.
Okay.
You're not going to do any math, are you, Noah?
No, I'm not doing any math. No. And then once you got out of high school, what was your life like?
That's an interesting question. I was engaged. I wanted to be married, and so that's what I did. I was married the fall of the year to my childhood sweetheart, and I thought it would be nice just to be a homemaker, but I got bored pretty fast. So I went to technical school, Ivy Tech, at that time was a technical school, and I learned how to be a lab technician, and that was a year program, and I went to, I got a job at a hospital, and I did all sorts of stuff in the lab. I learned how to do chemistry, and I learned how to do blood banking and microbiology, and I worked third shift. And one night there was an accident, so I had to type and cross-match blood, and then other things came in, and when you're the only person there, you know that typing and cross-matching blood for an accident is very important. So the other things wait. And one doctor wrote me up because I didn't get to his test. And the next day, the pathologist who's in charge of the lab called me in and told me it wasn't my business to think. And so that's when I decided you could tell me I was wrong, but not that I shouldn't think. So I think I signed up for a class that night and decided I was going to go to college, and that's what I did. So I worked and I went part-time to college. I had a baby, and then finally I couldn't do anymore at the extension, IU East in Richmond, so I commuted to Ball State, which was the best thing that I ever did because I got out of Dodge. Not, I love Dodge, but it's always good to get out of Dodge. And so then I got my degree, and then I decided, well, I still don't want people telling me it's not my business to think, so I went on for my PhD.
And then kind of bringing it back to going to Ball State, what was it like getting ready to? I know you said you were inspired to go to it by not wanting to be bossed around or not being told not to think. What was your decision on Ball State? Was it just location, or was it?
It was money. So I was right across the street from Earlham College, which was a good college. And I was just about 20 minutes away from Miami of Ohio. And it would have cost me, 4 times as much to go to Earlham and twice as much to go to Miami. And that would have been 1981. I had 2 more years to earn my degree in chemistry. So fortunately, that tuition was inexpensive, at least by today's standards. It didn't seem inexpensive then. One of the things they had when I was a student here is they started the fellowships, the honors fellowships. And I didn't join the honors college because I didn't think I could manage it with commuting and my family. But they did have a fellowship, and then you didn't have to be an honors student. You just had to have a GPA of so high. Mm-hmm. And so that was neat, and that was my first time in research. And that stipend actually was almost the same as a quarter's tuition. It was like $400 a quarter. So that really helped. So that was interesting.
And then once you got kind of to Ball State, you said you were commuting from home. What was it like kind of being not a typical freshman?
Yeah, well, I never had been. Well, I couldn't join things. I didn't feel like I could join things. I didn't belong to any student organizations, and I had a couple of study buddies, but not really. Then after a while, I found students in my hometown who would commute with me, and we would take turns driving. So we'd get up at 6 and leave, and somebody had an 8 a.m. class all the time, and we drove for 2 years together, and that was fun. And then we always would have guest writers, so there were 3 ladies, girls, and a guest writer sort of temporary, and they'd always be crazy people. Like one guy would say, we don't have to leave, it was his turn to drive, until 7:30. I can get this there in a half hour. And he would, and it's scary. And then another person was an opera singer, and another person was very religious, and one day she said that she didn't know the answer to a test, so she prayed and she came back and God had marked the test. And so my friend asked the most important question, was it right though? Was it right? He answered it, but was it right? So anyway, there were always so crazy people, and one guy had written all the answers to some history test on his arm, and so we always laugh about that.
How was your day once you got there?
To school?
Yeah.
Well, busy. I didn't ever waste time. Sometimes I have to take a nap in the student center hotel couch because, I'd wait till my daughter was asleep before I study, and then we were up at 6 and I was tired. So mostly in between classes, if I didn't have something I needed to do homework-wise, I'd take a nap.
Was it difficult having a daughter going to
Oh, yeah.
university? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about it.
How do you feel that was more challenging?
Well, first of all, she's autistic,
Oh.
and nobody knew that then. So I was struggling with that, trying to manage, understand that. So yes, it was very hard.
Mm-hmm.
So the schoolwork wasn't. It was always, a joy to me. It was, what I needed to do.
Did you have a professor or someone that really spoke to you?
Oh yeah, I did. Several actually, several. Actually, there was one at IU East that I had, and when I sat in his class, I thought, wow, what a neat job, And the interesting thing about that professor is I saw him here at Ball State about 20 years later in the atrium, and I went over and, and I got to tell him that. He was a history professor, really good. And then another one.
What was his name?
His name was Blakey. His name was Blakey. I don't know if there'd be anybody here who would know him or not at Ball State. Dr. Doyle hasn't been here as long as I have, so he probably hasn't. But if there's, who might know him was Dr. The former dean. No, not the former dean. He might know him too. But the Mr. Edmonds, Tony Edmonds, might have known him because he was a scholar. And then we had chemistry professors that, several really. Some are still here and some aren't. One of my favorites is in Florida, so I'd go visit him.
And then did you have help with your fellowship? Did you have a professor guiding you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, he's passed away.
And what was his name?
His name was Robert Van Natta.
And then it was relatively new, these fellowships, so what did yours entail?
It was developing an analytical method, a spectroscopic method for the concentration of acetic acid in vinegar.
Okay.
Love it that you're sitting across from me. So acetic acid is what gives vinegar its taste, the sour taste. So you have a box with light passing through it, and I must have had a reagent that changed colors, and the proportion of color or the intensity of color was related to the concentration of acetic acid, so I could take that measurement. So if I worked at the Heinz vinegar factory as a chemist, I could, tell them, okay, just give me a sample of this. I'll tell you how much vinegar you got in it. And they could have that quality control, kind of thing.
And then you mentioned the honors fellowship being helpful to you for paying for college. Did it help you in any other ways? Do you feel like
Oh yeah, just doing a little research and connecting that way is a wonderful thing for a student. Just understand that, because he asked me if I would work with him. So first of all, that was great. And then to get the experience to have a project and think in a way you didn't think in class is great. I gave a presentation at Notre Dame on it.
And then I want to do a quick backtrack here. At what time were you at IU East? Was that before Ball State?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It took me about 6 years to do 2 years of college because I worked. So it was, I went, might have been 76, something like that.
Because you came to Ball State at
77?
79 or 80?
I came to Ball State in 81.
Okay.
And it took several years to get those
Okay.
first 2 years of work because I took one class as a quarter while I worked.
So you were at IU East and then you transferred to Ball State? Okay. Okay. And then where were you working when you were in college?
It's called, when I was doing it part-time at IU East, I was working at Reed Hospital.
Is that in Richmond? Okay. And then did that involve anything with your college classes?
It was there that I learned that I liked chemistry. I had never taken chemistry in high school, just math. I was a math major. And so of all of the departments I rotated around in the hospital laboratory, I really enjoyed the chemistry department. So I thought I would really like to know what these tests are that I'm doing, et cetera. So, and then when I couldn't get any more there, I went full-time here, and I'd saved up enough money from working to do so.
And then overall, kind of looking back, what was your time at Ball State? How do you regard it as a student?
Always enjoyable. I mean, I loved my classes. I almost switched to an English major. I really enjoyed literature, but it was like, I just can't, I don't have that flexibility there. But that's okay. But I've always enjoyed that. I had such wonderful English professors, and I didn't think it was that much different than writing in your lab book, because the poetry professors would say, teach me how to make inferences, and when the author was really telling me something, that's not much different than what you do in the lab. What is it that you know, and what are you inferring? So I always thought there was more similarities than one might think.
And then once you kind of sort of reached the end of your journey at Ball State, were you looking towards grad school automatically? Or?
No. In fact, I had a job interview at Eli Lilly, and they had made me an offer. And the professor that I still visit in Florida was the chair of the chemistry department at the time, and he called me in and he said, well, there is a graduate school within your driving distance, and that was Miami of Ohio. So I never even thought about going to graduate school until he called me in sort of late in my senior year. And so anyway, I checked into it and applied, and I took a fall semester off and then went on to graduate school in the winter.
Did I ask you his name already?
No,
professor?
His name is Bruce Storhoff.
Okay. And then when you finally did graduate in 1983, You graduated magna cum laude.
I did.
And one of very few to do that. It's a very high honor. Did you feel a good sense of accomplishment with that, for the journey you'd been through?
Yeah, if I hadn't gotten that B- in that one class, I would have graduated summa cum laude. Yes, I was very honored, and I because of the fellowship and my research, I was able to apply for departmental honors, so that helped with that, the honors fellowship too. And so it's nice to stand up in a different time than everybody else did. We didn't have those the same kind of cords that people have today. So we didn't have a medal, that's it. We didn't have a medal. So, but yeah, it was. I felt good about that.
And then once you did go on to grad school, was it a big change going from Ball State to Miami of Ohio?
It's not so much of a change of a place, because I grew up around Miami and have been in Oxford a lot, and etc. But graduate school is a change, and it suited me. It's more, project oriented. So in chemistry or any of the sciences, you take fewer classes and you focus more on your research, and that suited me, and I loved that. It's like, the best time of your life, trying to contribute to a larger body of knowledge, I think. 'Cause I know that sounds kind of weird, but it was fun. I enjoyed learning those things.
How did going to grad school for, was it another 4 years, affect your personal life?
Well, it was tough. Yeah. But you also have a stipend for being a teaching assistant when you're in science, so that's good. So the financial, I wasn't broke. We weren't broke. My husband had a good job, and I got to contribute. But here's one thing I did do that nobody else did, because it's historically the right thing to do if you're a scientist is to stay all night in the lab, and I didn't. I left at 5. I was there at 8 and I left at 5. And I was done in 3.5 years. And because when I went there, I didn't mess around. I was always on task. I've been on task ever since, damn it. So.
And what did your husband do?
He was a factory worker.
Okay.
He worked for Dana Corporation.
Okay. And then while you were there in University of Miami, you
Now wait a minute.
Oh.
Us people from Miami would never say that.
Okay.
It's Miami University.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That's on me.
It is on you,
Let me
Noah.
change that up here. And then you said, did you get a graduate student fellowship while you were there?
Yeah, I did in my last year. So then I didn't have to teach. I could just, in the last year, a fellowship, you can just work in your lab.
Was that similar to the Ball State one?
No, it's much, it's more prestigious. I was the only one to get it.
And what all did that entail then?
Getting your stipend without having to earn it. In other words, so instead of teaching 2 freshman chemistry labs a week for my assistantship, which most people do, then I could do my last year without teaching and still get the same money or a little more.
You're the only one to get that out of your program. That's quite the accomplishment. And then you got your PhD, and what was your focus?
Physical chemistry.
Okay. And then did you have an advisor for that?
Yes.
What was his name?
His name was Jack Caton.
And what was his role?
Well, he's the one that had the lab, and built it. So when I was there, that he was making a change from a particular direction of work into one where you would, where he built a lab with new instruments that had only been around, manufactured in the last year or two. So nobody knew quite how to use them for analytical purposes. So this is a particular kind of micro spectroscopy. And so he built that from grants from industry. And so his role was to keep those laboratories up and to be the expertise behind any questions that you had. So he knew a lot about spectroscopy and how to interpret infrared spectra. And so that's his role. And to provide opportunities. This is kind of a long history in sciences to have an apprentice. So we all take in students. At a graduate level, you want to do it because you need, you not only like to teach, you need people to carry out your ideas. So almost always you carry on the field of your mentors, but then you branch off and you learn things that he or she doesn't know, and then you bring those to the table. So it's sort of an apprenticeship model. It's been around since the days of chemistry. At Ball State, we do that with our undergraduates, and mostly because that's just what we do. What if you have a lab and you don't have students? What is that? It's nothing. Who can you show what you know? Because it's not all just knowledge. It's a lot of skill. So.
And then you've mentioned spectroscopy a couple times. What really drew you to that subject?
Well, first of all, Dr. Kate, there were two people that I thought I might want to work for, and one was a spectroscopist and one wasn't. And I chose the person I thought I could be comfortable with and spend the next 3 or 4 years with and learn a lot from. So they were both good scientists, and then I chose one that I thought was a good human being out of those two. And he happened to be a spectroscopist, and that's fine. So I'm a spectroscopist.
There you go. And then once you graduated in 1987, correct? Where did you go after that?
Right here.
Right here?
Mm-hmm.
Did you move to Muncie, or did you stay where you were?
That's a long and complicated history. Yes, I stayed, then we moved, then we moved, then we moved. Along in there, I was divorced, and then I moved up here. So probably, I don't even remember, 6 years into 6 or 7 years while I was here. So there were several moves. Part of those had to do with finding a place where my daughter fit and could go to school. And some was my husband still worked in Richmond, so we always had this, long commute or not. Then we were halfway, and then we're north of Muncie. Anyway, so yes to both.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, when did you get divorced?
Trying to, I can't quite remember. 1994 maybe,
okay.
Something like that. That sounds about right.
Okay.
1994. I'm going with that.
Okay. And then after that, you moved closer to Ball State.
Yeah,
campus?
I moved within walking distance. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and then I've been sort of in that neighborhood, not that same house ever since, but in the neighborhood. About 12 minutes from Cooper Science. It's longer to the Honors College.
Mm-hmm. And then by that time, were you still with your daughter as well?
Yes and no. There was a time after that when she was 16 where I had to have her put in a facility. So that because when sometimes she's a smart enough girl, but when you're a teenager and you have disabilities, and it really is a big hump for a person to go through. And if you can imagine what you were like at 16, when you don't understand what's going on with yourself and the people around you don't know either, it really puts you at a disadvantage. So she needed to have some care that I couldn't give her. And so she was in a facility for a while, and then moved to one in Fort Wayne, and was in one until she was 21, and then had various group homes. Now she's in an apartment by herself. She can catch any bus in Fort Wayne. She can take anybody anywhere on that bus system, and we do have a camera in there, but I think we're almost ready to take that out. So she's come a long way.
It's really great to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
And then once you did return to Ball State, what was your role?
Well, I was the first woman in chemistry, and that was hard. And I was assistant professor, and at that point, I was sort of the only junior faculty. I think there was one other ahead of me that did not get tenure. So it was kind of, I didn't have anybody who was of my ilk in terms of science or sex. And so that was a little hard. The fellows were real nice and so forth, but it was not, I was pretty green about the university and how it ran, and how to think about managing everything. So I taught physical chemistry, and I worked hard getting my classes ready. I was a pretty good teacher of physical chemistry. I taught graduate classes as well. So,
what was your original taking to teaching? Did you like it a lot, or did it take a while to get to that?
I always loved it.
Was it mostly freshmen you were teaching to start
No,
out?
they were mostly seniors, chemistry majors. So they were, it's a junior class, but at that time, mostly people put it off until they were seniors. There's a sticker that chemists have that say, honk if you passed P-Chem. So P-Chem is physical chemistry, so that's what I taught. It has calculus and physics in it, so they have to put it all together.
Did a lot of students were kind of afraid of that class then?
Oh yeah, they were afraid of it.
Was it more fun to teach that way, or with them with that idea?
That's a good question. Yeah, probably is. And yeah, and I tried to make it fun.
In what ways did you make that fun?
Well, I'll make a reference that you won't get. There used to be a comedian named Johnny Carson, and he would have Karnak the Magnificent. Mm-hmm. Do you know Karnak?
Yeah.
Well, so one day I got from the theater department a Swami outfit, and I was not Karnak, but Carnot, which is a play on words of Carnot for the Carnot cycle, which is about heat transfer. So I was Carnot the Magnificent, and then I had letters, and I asked chemistry questions, and then I'd rip them open and blow in the envelope. Cracked me up.
That's pretty good. Jeez. And then you said that environment was tough for you. Did it feel tough when you were teaching as well?
Not very often. Every now and then there would be something that I wouldn't expect a student reaction or something, you know, that's just something teachers have to learn, you know, surprises. Somebody's real angry about something. I mean, it's life, you know, we're with students and they have to live and go through stuff, and they're irritable and it's stressful, and so when things aren't smooth, it sort of surprises you. So only in that sense I feel.
Okay.
Now when you're mentoring students in the laboratory, I was way too hard on them. I expected way too much from them. And my very first graduate master's student that I graduated, I wish I could, you know, apologize to her face on how hard I was to her. Because man, I didn't want anything but perfection from her. And that's something most professors go through when they see themselves, and it's kind of like being their parent. And because I could never get any perfection out of my daughter, so maybe my graduate students, I made them work hard, and they didn't have any, I didn't cut them any slack. So I wish I could have done that better, but you learn. So now I tell the young faculty, those students are not you. They are not you. The sooner you learn that, you got 7 years to learn that, and that's it. I'm giving you 7 years. So that's an interesting thing to learn about, is how to teach that way. So, yeah, just when you finally get it down, you feel like you're close to retiring, you know? It's like, okay, I got it now. Time to go.
It's a little too late. That's really great, yeah. And then in 1994, you became involved in the Whittinger program. What was that all about?
My chairperson volunteered me, you know. Here's how it goes. The college needs somebody to represent them on the Whittinger committee. Would you like to do it? And, you know, as still a junior faculty, yes, I'd be happy to do that. So yeah, and that was kind of weird because, first of all, you're with a lot of people that you've never known, and they're not like you, and they don't think like you. And when you read the profiles of the Whittinger applicants, you know, you think something differently than they do. So that, you know, that was an experience, and I learned from that quite a bit too. So try to accept how somebody else thinks, and, you know, sort of observe that.
What was that process like, the selection process?
Well, they had done interviews. That would have been Joanne Edmonds and Arno Whittick. And I had Arno as a professor. He was my Psych 100 professor. And he would come in and say, "Hello, colleagues." And I'm thinking, who says hello, colleagues? Well, Arno says hello, colleagues, you know? So I do that now too, but nobody did it over there then, and so that was kind of different. Then they had already interviewed, and I swear we read hard copies of 100 folders, and we'd have 2 weeks to do it. It's like, so you'd come to Burkhardt, which is where it was housed, and you'd sit at a conference room, and pretty soon somebody else would come in. And, you know, I'd just be taking a few notes here and there, and one fellow, I'm trying to remember who he was, would have this grid with all these hand-drawn lines and things up at the top, and he'd check this and put a number 5 here and a 3 here. I'm thinking, what the hell is he doing? So then you would go, but that's how some people make decisions, you know. I'm just sort of trying to get the feel of who this person is by reading their folder. Now I have something in between, by the way. I do have a grid with some numbers. But it's not like this. It's not like a 20 by 50 grid. And so then we would get together, and Arno would say, okay, who's in your top, name one person in your top 5. So we'd go around the room, and pretty soon we'd have a group that almost, or at least 3 or 4 people that everybody, liked. And so that then we'd go down to the harder level of people. We'd have 10. We'd talk about their essays. And this was interesting because people would like answers that I hated, People would like questions for the essay that I hated, or vice versa. So it was really interesting to see.
Do you feel like your differences in opinion were about your differences in major, or your just overall opinion differences?
Yeah, both probably. Like there was a question, this one, now Barb came on later, and she loved this question, something about the moon is hounding me. What was it? It was something about the moon having this influence over you, and she loved this question. And I absolutely hated it because I thought any of the science students who would read it would think it's so stupid. They would not, because it wasn't related to anything physical, that they wouldn't be able to answer it. Now, I don't mean to say that I didn't like questions that weren't imaginative, but it was sort of a question that was counter science. It was almost an insult to ask this question, which Barb would remember it verbatim.
Did you feel like you kind of did you try and change that then?
I tried. I always waste my opinion. I'm not very good at changing people's minds, but at least I tell them what I think.
Gave it a shot.
Yeah, I had an influence maybe here and there, so they got me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was it like working with Dr. Whittick?
Well, he's an interesting guy. He's just who he is. He's pleasant, positive. I've never seen that guy be anything but pleasant and positive. And, he was easy to work with, very easy to work with. I liked him as a teacher. He enjoyed his class. So just easygoing, what can I say? And then along that time, I tried out to take people overseas as an honors class overseas. We had a thing there called the Westminster College. It wasn't the London Center. And it wasn't part of Oxford University. It was in Oxford, but it was a teacher's college right outside of town. And so they had a program there. And so I applied for that. I proposed a course, applied for it. And this is something that I remember. I've never told Arno. I should tell him. But somehow I thought he would like it if I'd have a better interview if I had nails. So that morning or the night before, I put on fake nails for my interview. And because I don't know why, I thought he would like the nails. So I know he noticed them because I remember him looking down at them.
Did he? He didn't comment at all?
He did not comment, but he did look at him. He noticed him.
Hmm.
He's probably thinking, I've never seen her with me. I know, I don't wear them. So that's something I remember.
And how long are you still on that board for the Whittinger program?
No, I am not. I was on that I thought I counted those years the other day. A good 11 years, maybe longer. And then I was on it when I was associate dean, acting associate.
Okay, yeah. We'll get to that.
Interim and then
yeah.
acting and then interim. I can't remember.
Acting, then interim.
Okay.
And then you mentioned the Westminster College trip. Can you tell me a little bit more about what all that entailed, what led up to it?
You know, I'm trying to think of what led up to it. I had not had a sabbatical, and I've heard had two colleagues in chemistry that had gone to England, one in Oxford and one in Cambridge. And so I thought, I think I'd like to do that. And then I must have talked to Arno about it. So I just put my application in. I may have been the only one who applied, I don't know. So I had 8 students. Some weren't honor students because they didn't have quite enough to fill. So I announced it in general to my Chem 111 class, and I got 2 people from my class to join us. One was a chemistry major and one wasn't. And they were interesting kids. I had 4 girls and 4 boys and really enjoyed them. I had my own flat there in college, and the first thing we did was tour the periphery of England for the first 2 weeks. That was a hoot. And one of my guys was allergic to peanuts, so I had to take him to the hospital in Penzance because he accidentally ate something with peanuts in it. And then we had a blast. We had, and we worked. I mean, they worked. One guy started a basketball team for the English girls. One person started an international student club because there were other international students on that campus. And I got to travel on other times. I traveled to Paris, and I traveled to Amsterdam, and where the students had gone one weekend, and they told me about coffee shops, and I thought that was a place to get a piece of pie and a cup of coffee. And went to Ireland, and so yeah, it was great. And then 3 years ago, my students and I got together at my house, so that was our 20th anniversary or something like that. They had grown kids, and it was neat. They arranged for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really sweet of them. How long were you there?
6 weeks. No, it has to be longer, 90 days.
Okay.
Because that was the magical number. Then you had to have some special thingy after that.
What sort of special?
Like a special visa of some sort or something. So you could stay 90 days without having anything but your passport.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
And then what year do you remember that you got really involved in the Honors College?
Boy, you're asking some hard questions there. I started teaching classes probably, and I was still on the committee. I don't know if I can remember what that year might have been. Probably 1996, 97.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you ever meet with Dr. Bruce Meyer at that time?
Yes. In fact, he came over to Westminster to visit with me. He was traveling, and he stopped, and we chatted, I remember. Then he was also doing the Whittinger committee. I was on that committee when he was dean. Mm-hmm.
Did you have a good relationship with him then?
Yeah, but it wasn't very long,
Yeah.
of course. Wasn't very long at all.
Did that kind of hit the Ball State and the Honors College kind of hard? Do you remember?
It was a surprise. That's probably what I would say. It was just such a shock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think it wasn't hard's probably not the right word, because he hadn't been there as long to have the same sort of extent of a memory on everybody. Mm-hmm.
But you still felt like he was an important presence for what short time he was there.
Yeah. I think he had some vision. I think he was over there investigating some other avenues for study abroad and programs. That's what he was there for, as I recall.
So he was really hands-on?
I think he was trying to, think about what if. I think he realized that was an important, that study abroad was an important avenue for honors students to pursue. So he was trying to expand on that and see what other options he had. I was thinking that he was trying, now that you mention it, it jogged my memory. There's this part of Oxford called Oxford Brookes, and I don't know quite how it's different from Oxford University. It's closely connected, but it's not necessarily a part. I think he was investigating having a program there at Oxford Brookes. One of my students that I took, Michael Sutton, who I still keep in touch with, he lives close by in Indy. He fell in love with an English girl, and I didn't think I was going to get him back on the plane. And his parents were very old at that time. I don't even know if they're still alive. And he was an only child, and I'm thinking, Michael, don't make me greet your parents at the airport and you're not with me. So I had to pry him away from this beautiful young girl. And so he came back in the following year, he came back, and he wanted to be a chemistry teacher. And I said, the problem with you pursuing that over there is when you come back home, that might not apply. So he pursued at Oxford Brookes. This was connected to that place. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm babbling about it. And he got a environmental science degree there, which was great. But anyway, I think that's what Dr. Meyer was doing.
Okay. And he went back for her then?
He went back for her. That didn't work out, but he got a degree that he could use. So he's at the Indiana Department of Environmental Management now, kind of a big wig there.
Mm-hmm. And then what classes in honors did you teach first?
I've always taught the 296.
Mm-hmm. And what's the official title for that?
That's physical science honors. You know what? I'm ashamed. I can't pull it up. Scientific inquiries in physical science. Close.
I'm sure it's close. What was the process of getting you to teach that?
Again, the chair. It's always the chair's fault. I was a department chair for a while, so I understand how this goes. We need somebody to teach the honors science class. Would you be interested in it? First I shared it with someone, and then I did it on my own. And then I had a break from that for a while. We didn't offer any for a while, I guess. There was a hiatus in the department in regard to offering honors. So then when I was chair, I got someone back in. I couldn't do it, but I got someone back in to do it. And then when I was on honors, in the honors college, I tried to get back into it.
You know what the cause of that hiatus was?
Well, you see, teaching honors courses is something that a department does. You get your faculty get credit, but it's not something that is, what should I say? It's just sort of a sense that a chair might have about taking one of his or her faculty and, if you will, donating them to the Honors College. And I believe our chair at that time, and he's someone who I really respected, sort of had that sense. So you're always trying to balance your needs with the people you have. And we were growing at that time, so he actually may have run up into, some constraints with not having somebody to do it. But there's also a sense that you're sort of, loaning the Honors College of faculty.
Do you feel like the science department at that time didn't really want to go through with that? Is that why?
Yeah, probably. Or at least the chemistry department did.
Did the actual professors want to do those honor science classes?
I think they would. I think some people would. And people had asked me, if there's any chance for me to do it. But you can't just let, it's like, well, if you teach the honors course, then what are we going to man? What course aren't we going to teach here, So, so that's what chairs have to think about.
And then when did you become a full-time professor? Or when did you become full?
Well, I think it must have been 10 years, so 97-ish.
98?
98, yeah.
Okay. And then what other courses did you teach besides 296, like throughout Ball State?
Well, I've taught a lot. Chem 100, which is for non-majors. When I taught it, it was a big class, 160 or something like that. Chem 111, which is for science majors. I've taught 225, which is quantitative analytical chemistry. Physical chemistry, which is a year-long course, 344, 345. I taught instrumentation, 420 for seniors. Graduate courses, 646, which is physical chemistry, and 640, I can't remember that name, which is the graduate in analytical chemistry. And an environmental chemistry course.
So you've taught a lot of courses.
Anything but biochemistry and organic. Not teaching those.
You don't want to teach those?
I can't. I don't have the wherewithal. That's a whole different language. So.
Did you have a difference in teaching style or liking between general classes and your honors classes?
That's a great question. Because see, my last honors class didn't go well. I just read those reviews and I was almost in tears. And so here's the difference between when I used to do it and what I'm doing now. So since then, I've been in the Honors College and around people, Honors College professors, and around Dr. Emmert. Dr. Emmert is one special guy because he's got all these, his right brain and his left brain are exactly equal. And, that's not quite me. But what he can do is more, I was trying to sort of enrich the class with things like discussion or thinking about a novel and its consequences, science's consequences on society, and try to engage that way, and as well as teach them some sort of things about science, physical science and physical chemistry that they might not have understood, that they might meet every day. And I had readings, and So in the old days, what I did was we had some things in class and demos and labs, but we didn't have as many discussions or as many readings and reviews. And that seemed to work better. In other words, and I would have them do a paper at the end. And I might have given them, you know, some quizzes, and so it was more of a standard thing. And since then, I've grown to see what more the Honors College wants, and I'm not sure I can deliver it. You know, I'm not sure I'm skilled enough to deliver it that way. And the other aspect is that I'm not sure the students want science to be that way. I'm not sure they want it to be that way. At least my last group didn't seem to want it. So I'm a little unsure, you know. So I would say, yes, I was trying to make it different between the honor students. I was trying to give them more things to read, more things to work towards in terms of making connections. And I'm not sure that's worked.
You feel that the Ball State honors science classes have kind of lost their way as they've gone along?
No, I'm just talking about myself personally. And you know, all of the guys or the faculty that teach those, they have their own thing, their own way of doing that. And I was just trying to find a way for me to embrace the philosophy of honors courses in a little deeper way than I used to. And if the reviews are an indication of things, I'm not quite sure that I've got it. And so I just wonder if I'm able to reach out to them in that way. You know, I'm not Jason Powell or Tim Berg. I don't have those kinds of verbal skills or and you know, sometimes students don't expect that anyway in science. Sometimes they want what they expect. They did not like Cat's Cradle. I don't either, but I think it's so interesting, and I thought I made lots of connections. But there, you know, it's in the development stage.
Okay.
I'm not quite ready to call it quits yet. I want to do better.
And since you've been here, you've really pushed the honors science. Can you talk about what you've done to kind of push for more honors science classes?
Well, you have to talk to people about if they want to do it or not. And I think that's all, you know, the fact that I'm a scientist and has done it helps. I think it helps from it going scientist to scientist to do that. So I think, and I'd like to and I probably feel a little more strongly about the levels of science in the other aspects of the Honors College, like the social science more too. You know, I think that's a way of being a human and expressing your humanness, that scientific process is, and I think that's important to experience for students to know about that. What makes sense in this argument? What's the facts? How do we approach getting those facts, and analyze them? So, does that make sense?
You mentioned many times already about going into jobs because your chairs asked you.
Yes.
What happened once you became the chair of your department? in
Well,
about 2008. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then I'm the asker, right? It's the university always needs people, and so there's some call up here, and then it goes to the college, and then goes to the chairs, and then you go to your faculty, and yep, you have to be the asker, and you have to build enough community so that at the same time you have to protect people that are trying to earn tenure and work with students in the lab and get grants and write. So you sometimes you do things yourself because if you have a young faculty, you want them to focus on the things that will help them succeed right away. So as a chair, you both ask and you don't ask because of that.
How were you selected for that position?
I was elected by the faculty.
Was that by just your department faculty?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then the dean okays it, the dean of the College of Sciences and Humanities.
Do you have a really good relationship with your faculty?
Yeah, I thought so. I think so. I did my best. I was a good servant. So it's not always, of course, easy. And problems always come up, both personal and professional problems. And conflicts. The nice thing about the department I'm from is that when we get into arguments, it's about the right thing to do. It's about what is the best thing for our program, for our students, for us as a community. So that's easier to take than when it's, trivial, stupid stuff. And we don't have that too much. It still doesn't make it easy, and I had difficult situations to try to resolve. There's no doubt about that. And so sometimes that was, all I could stand. It's probably one of the hardest jobs there is out there, as department chair. Just because that management of faculty, students, and graduate students and your staff, it's a big deal.
How long did you have that position?
6 years, 2 terms.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And there was someone who wanted it, who was young and eager, and I think that's good. I've always thought it was good not to have the same person as chairperson for very long, because it's only until you step into that position do you understand what it's like. It's kind of like being a parent. You don't understand what it's like to be a parent until you are one. You think you can do things. And so, it's and I don't know if our current chair will stay on any longer or not, but it was good for him. I was ready to step down, take a break.
Do you have a good relationship with him once he replaced you?
Mm-hmm. And more so the longer he's been in the job. And that's because I know that he understands stuff.
Has he looked to you for advice at any time?
He has. I appreciate that he asked me for advice. That's a good question. I think more so, again, later, because you have to sort of establish yourself, as the boss, first and foremost, and then you understand.
And then, since you were still involved in Honors College at this time, did you have any experiences with Dr. Rubel?
Oh yeah, lots of them. And one of the things that I had with him, which wasn't directly related to the Honors College, is we were on the NCAA committee together that evaluated grades across all the athletic types, sports. And that was really interesting to to look at together. You know, we looked at the grades of the golfers versus the basketball players versus, and we had to answer this, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages worth of questions. So that was kind of fun. He knows my husband because my husband and he were on a committee that hired a particular athletic director together. And he always told my husband he should have been in the Honors College because he's in the business college. And I always thought that was insightful of Dr. Rubel because he should have been in. He's much more of a humanist than a businessman. And so yes, so in the and where else did I interact with Dr. Rubel? Several times on occasions. He was always trying to talk me back into the Honors College. That's when I was in a position not to be so flexible. So part of what happened is that chair I told you about, when he moved into chair, the one before me, I took his place in a class. And it sort of didn't leave much room to teach an honors class. So Dr. Rubel was always trying to talk me into coming back. So.
Did you have, what was he like? What was your guys' relationship?
He was just a delightful guy, you know, just as pleasant as could be. How would I describe him different than Arno, who I described the same way? He had a more, I don't know if wry is the right word. Dr. Rubel had more of a sense of humor. He could laugh a little more freely, maybe make the joke himself, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, they came from different directions, even though they ended up, you know, they're both real enjoyable kinds of people. I always felt like I could, and because I was in this position of analysis of stats, and maybe I felt more comfortable than on the Whittinger committee, but I always felt like I could, you know, argue my point with him and, you know, he'd understand it. So I guess in that sense I thought he was analytical and that sort of thing. He loved sports. He was our representative to the NCAA, so he always went to those meetings, those bigger meetings, and ended up at the Senate and that kind of thing. And I was on the Senate for several years. That's probably the other place where I was able to, he would always give reports, say, at the Senate. So I was a senator for many years.
What was your time like at the Senate?
Oh, that was really interesting. If you want to learn about the university, you go sit in Senate meetings every month. You learn about personalities and departments fast there.
Were you chosen for that too?
Yeah, I was elected for that. And the days I was in it, you were a college representative, so I was our college representative.
And you were there how long again?
You know, it was a good 8 years, then I was off because they make you get off, and then I was on again. So maybe 8, off 4, on 4, something like that. And then it was reorganized. And this was something I was not for, is having this 2 separate things, a university senate and a faculty senate. Because it doubles up your time. And I felt like then people wouldn't want to do it, you know. And I liked always not forming an opinion until I heard the administration's or the students' point of view. So.
Do you remember what years you were there, by any chance?
It was early on. You know, that was one of those things the chair asked me again. I think, you know, when you're the only woman, sometimes you get asked maybe more often than not on some of those things. That was like, I don't know, 92 to 8 years, and then off 4, and then on 4, something like that.
Do you feel like being a woman professor was part of the reason for that?
I don't know. Maybe at first.
Do you feel that way for a lot of the science department? Being the first hired chemistry female as well?
Feel like what?
Like in your coming here and like being your first woman hired by the chemistry department, and do you feel like you were perfectly in control, or do you feel like that kind of took you places you wouldn't normally?
Yeah, it's both. It's like takes you places you wouldn't go normally, and also then you also feel like, well, am I just the token woman? So it's, yes, probably that's true on lots of occasions, but it didn't matter. It helped me.
You took it by the reins and...
Well, I don't know if by the reins is the right word, but, I rode along for the ride. I went along for the ride, yeah.
You mentioned a little bit earlier, your husband. When did you remarry? And what was his name?
I remarried 16 years ago, 15 and a half years ago. His name is Howard Hammer. He's a business professor.
How did you two meet?
At the bridge table. Do you know what that is? Do you know what bridge is?
I know what bridge is, yeah. I don't know how to play it, but I know what bridge is.
We're actually life masters, and we play in tournaments. We've actually played the world champions before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we didn't win, but... And it wasn't a world event. I don't want to make it sound like we were at one of the key events, but we did happen to sit by them, and play them while we were dating. But, at Bridge. So not here, but at Bridge.
Was he professor when you started dating?
Oh, yeah. He still works, and he's been here for over 40 years.
Is it nice to have another professor?
It's great to have another professor. I can't tell you. I wouldn't have been able to be chair without him, or even he's the associate dean without him, because you get to go home and tell him what happened during the day, and he understands the stuff. So, yeah, it's wonderful.
It seems really great.
Yeah.
Especially with playing the world champions it's a big level of
trust. If I
trust.
just finessed the 8 of hearts,
Ooh.
we would have beat their asses.
Okay, I wanna take it back a little bit. Back to Dean Rubel. As he got along further in his career, obviously he started having some health complications. Do you want to talk about what that time was like?
Well, I don't know that much about what that was like, except at a distance, because I was still in the chemistry office. I actually am in a club with his wife, a stock club, and so I knew that he had not, so off and on in the club, I knew he hadn't been well, and because I'd heard her say something on more than one occasion. So, it, and I knew it was progressing, and, I was, just upset about that. So I was in Florida on vacation, ready to teach freshman chemistry, when Dr. Emmert called me and said, I've got permission to get some help. I've been working by myself, and would you come over? And so I said, well, give me a few days to think about that. So that's, I had the few days. We flew back home, and I walked into our chair's office. I said, I know you don't want to hear this, but here's what's happening. I know next week's school, but I'm not going to be here. So.
What year was that?
Well, it would have been 2 years in the...
2016?
Must have been 2016, because it was 2016, 2017, yeah.
Okay.
It would have been August 2016.
Did that get taken well once you needed help and told them that you were a week away from leaving?
Yes. Yes, he understood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then what was your role helping Dr. Emmert?
I had to meet with every study abroad student and see if there was anything that could assist them in their honors curriculum. So I had to learn about that real fast. I had to learn how to arrange for the teaching schedules each semester for the honors curriculum. So I had to check with past people, check with new people to see if they were wanting to teach this year, and try to put together enough courses of each persuasion so that the honors student would be able to, have something to take. That's tough. It's not like, even though the chemistry curriculum is tough with 45, 55 labs in the fall, at least we know how to put those together. This is one where I don't even know who the professors are going to be. So that was interesting to learn. Then when people propose new courses, you have to go through a vetting thing. I was responsible for trying to arrange for that and to help them develop a course and make it better from their plan to some extent. I was involved with interviewing the Whittingers. So sometimes that meant for 3 weeks you had to have maybe 6 a day. It's exhausting. And write all of those up. What else? Theses. I met with many students about their theses. And this was actually, I didn't like it at first, because I thought, why do I have to do this? But then I started liking it when I realized this is just like, a thesis is a thesis. Doesn't matter if you're whatever you are. It doesn't matter if you're a business person or English person. It has the same kind of elements. And I've decided I could really talk to students and help them with that. So once I learned that I could do that, I enjoyed it a lot more. So I had to approve their thesis, and then I had to, read them all. And then, that's not me mentoring students through their whole thesis. It's just to help them get an idea, maybe help them find a professor to be their research advisor, and be there if they had any problems, and that kind of thing. And I helped assist Tim with developing, and Barb with developing guidelines for thesis. And I got them to submit them electronically. I set up the Blackboard site and that kind of stuff. So I helped with the contract faculty developing their salary document, which they hadn't done, and their merit documents, or that's the same thing, and their promotion documents. Then I helped hire people. I helped hire the new associate dean. I helped hire 3 of the faculty that we have now. So in 2 of those cases, I was the head of that committee. I did a lot of recruiting, went to events, passed out things, told them about the Honors College, and talked to parents, went to all the banquets. schmoozed. There's a lot of smoozing in the Honors College. Gosh, it's endless schmoozing. And cookies.
It's better than
kicking the pants.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think that's how I helped him. I helped him think a little bit. I was there for him to talk to, and I really enjoyed working with Dr. Emmert and Corley. They were the best, and Barb. Oh my gosh, they are so magnificent, and they work hard. They all work hard, you know. So, but it's nice to being able to be sort of like, you know, second in command is not a bad place to be. And you know, if John asked me advice, I could give him my perspective on it, and he may or may not take it, but he would certainly listen, and that was nice. I'd like to brainstorm about ideas, and he always listened to those. So.
What was the impact of the Honors College by Dr. Rubel's death?
Oh, that was devastating. Yeah, I was sitting in that chair when that happened, and it was devastating. Especially when, you know, personally to Coralie, she was so close to him. I mean, being his personal secretary, she held it together for like 2 weeks, and then John was gone one day. There was something that happened, and, you know, I knew it hit her, and I knew it, and it was hard. It was hard. Students that knew him were very sad. I was at the funeral, and that was, you know, there were a lot of people that came back. One of my honor students that I had in my lab came back from graduate school. She drove from, I don't know where she was, Arkansas or some god-awful place like Arkansas, all the way back. And, you know, so the people, especially the students that had traveled with him and his wife, and that year they asked, the seniors asked Connie to give the talk at the Whittinger dinner because a lot of those students had traveled, and, you know, and that was hard for Connie, but she did it. She sort of told about their life as a couple. Yeah, so it was hard. So I was glad that I was glad that I could be there to be, you know, I can't give much emotional support, but they weren't all by themselves, you know. So I could sort of help the people on the top floor a little bit there, and that was good. So I was happy to do that.
And then once he did pass on, and then you started the search for a new dean. Were you really involved in that, you said?
And the new dean, I was not on that committee. They didn't put me on that committee, but I did go to all the talks of the visitors, and I wrote my input down and submitted it to the provost. So hopefully that was helpful.
Mm-hmm. Did you agree with the decision to?
I did agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in my mind, it was a no-brainer. Part of what Dr. Emmert brings that nobody else had brought, or anybody that they interviewed could bring, was the blend of a science and a humanities perspective. And frankly, when I was first on the Whittinger committee, I wanted them to have more of a science perspective. I felt like even in their interview, if you know, so many scientists are not incredibly verbal, you know, they felt like they gave that interview too much weight. You know, so if you had a real nerd, there's more than one way to contribute. You know, you don't have to always contribute through your verbalness. And now think they should be able to write well, but still. So, I mean, it's not just that, but I mean, he's kind of magical in that way. He's got a perspective and an appreciation for that, because I do think that it's a component of the college that needs to be there. Otherwise, it's not a university, an overall honors program. It needs to have some variety, and that's a piece of that variety. I mean, other than that, and the fact that he's so, he works so hard, and he's good with people, and he understands systems, and he understands money, and, you know, all the things that it takes to be a dean.
With the introduction of Dr. Mearns a few years ago, along with kind of similar to the same time as Dr. Emmert, do you like the direction Ball State's going?
Yes, I do. I think it'll be fine. I think we'll see what happens in a couple more years. I mean, in many ways, the jury's out, still out, but Dr. Mearns' philosophy is good. He's a nice person. I think he says what he means. You know, I don't see any games that we have to play. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you for that. That was really good. I want to kind of take it back to your own career outside of just teaching. What have you done that's kind of been with like projects or papers or research that's you've really enjoyed, or something that you've really liked to focus on?
One of the things I did was teach a special class for students that had to do with the analysis of art, and I had 4 artists or 3 artists and 3 chemists. Maybe it was just 6. 3 artists, 3 chemists, maybe 4 artists, 4 chemists. I think the former. And we analyzed sculpture in the art museum, and then they formed a presentation and collected all their data, and I had some funds for this, and we flew in a person from New York who's a specialist, and she heard it, and it was good. They were good. The artists were just as good as the chemists. And so that was a lot of fun. And we actually wrote a paper, and it's published. And so that was something that was sort of, not high-level research, but it was great fun to do and teach. So.
And then you're also a member of the National Science Foundation, is it Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority
Yes.
Participation? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. I'm a co-PI with people from IUPUI on this grant. It's a $5 million dollar grant for the state, and the aim is to increase the number of underrepresented students in the sciences. Since right now our population is changing so much that if we don't get more Hispanics and African Americans into science and have them earn degrees, we won't have enough technical people to serve our country. So that's the National Science Foundation's motivation behind this. And at Ball State, if you look at the statistics, it's like other universities. It doesn't go well. You don't have the same percentage of minorities finishing their degrees. So what we are doing is putting in some programs into place to help preparedness, help be mentored by other peers, giving them research experiences like I had when I was a student. It's well known that that really helps connect you not only to your discipline but to a faculty member. So that's important for a student in their persistence in something, because there's many humps to go through. That, organic chemistry is one of them that students have trouble getting over when you're a science major. So and also to develop a support system around them so that they don't feel isolated. And I understand that, being the only woman in chemistry and not having a group, somebody to support you. When another woman was hired, it's surprising how much that helped. Just to have somebody in the ladies' room with you, and you can say, "What did you think about that?" God, you kidding me? So, those kinds of things. I'm real proud of that, what we've done here at Ball State. We're very active. The president did a video for us. It's on our website. He was gracious enough to do that. He knew Louis Stokes. He went to his law school. He was his congressman in Cleveland. The students are fantastic. So it's a lot of work, but I'm proud to be a part of that and try to help us make our university better and help the country really have more scientists there that are trained. And many of our activities will encompass the entire group of scientists as well. So
it's a really good cause. It's
yeah.
a lot of good work there. How long have you been with them?
Well, this is a grant that is in its third year. We had one several years ago that I was a part of as well. So.
And then, kind of with your own research, are you still doing research and writing papers today?
Yes, I am.
What's your focus on there?
Well, there's two things. One is that I'm writing a paper right now, which is a review article about medieval pigments and infrared spectroscopy. So even though I'm not in the lab doing the lab work, I'm doing the intellectual work on that. And then the other thing I'm working on is a research for the LSAMP grant. I looked at all the applications across the state and found many commonalities in some of the students' essays and when they describe what they can contribute or what things they've overcome. So I'm actually analyzing that data, doing some social science work, which I've never done, which is kind of fun, with a colleague, and we're trying to sort of profile who our applicants are and what their needs are, so that maybe we could target our services a little better, or educate our faculty in how to deal with issues that they might not see. So.
Do you still do work with infrared spectroscopy?
Yes, I do. Well, that's the review that I do. Like I said, I have not been in my laboratory for a couple years, so I'm not doing the experiments, but I'm still involved. So.
That's good. Do you feel like you're a resident expert on that?
I believe I am an expert on infrared spectroscopy, yes.
You're an expert on pronouncing it too, unlike myself.
Yes, and there's microspectroscopy too, so you have to get started. It's not as hard as molybdenum. You have to get a running start with molybdenum, but it gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously you've been a part of Ball State for a long time, whether it be a student or a professor or a dean or any of the above. How have you seen it kind of change since when you first showed up as a student to where you are now?
Well, it hasn't changed in many, many ways. And unless I'm just making this all up in my head, and I don't think so. I think there's still that long history of wanting to be a nourishing place for our students and nurturing both. And I don't know if that's because we keep hiring people that are like us in that sense. And maybe that's why I was hired, but and my hypothesis is it came out of us being a teacher's college wanting to do the right thing by our students. What's only different is this is a much more beautiful campus than when I was first here, and when my husband was first here. Now the quad's always been beautiful. There's no doubt about that. But that's been a great thing to make that campus look like its delivery services here. Look as spectacular as what it delivers to its students. So that's my sense. There's probably more research going on than there was then, but not at the stake of our education that we give. Not like it's not the same extent as when you have PhD programs that real big ones that just that's all that matters. So that's good. I mean, I only see good things here for Ball State from when I was a student. And thank God we're getting out of Cooper Science. Dang.
I'm with you on that one.
Oh my God.
So then, kind of bringing it down, what about the Honors College and the time you've spent being a part of it, whether it be teaching honors science classes to now? What have you seen and change?
Well, certainly it's going through a lot of changes because of the hiring of these faculty, and they have a much larger core faculty. When we were here, it had 0 core faculty, and then I can't remember how long ago they had 2, and now what is it, 5? Tim and Jason and Jackson and Beth and then Alex. So now we have 5, and there's a half. That's Obed. Obed's a half-time. So that it didn't used to exist. So now it's becoming a organization that will have to understand itself. These guys have never, down here, the faculty have never had that organization in the Honors College before. That's different for them. That's going to be different because they'll have to function more like a department there. So there's one aspect to that. So that's more locally. John has done a lot of things in terms of trying to nourish young faculty to come in and be what he calls fellows. So that's also affecting that. So he's trying to make a stronger base for this teaching base for the Honors College. Okay, that's nothing but good for it. So it makes it more certain. It makes it more rigorous, that kind of thing. So that's great. He'll try to diversify it a little bit, maybe get some more international students in, more men, more underrepresented people. That would all be good if they could, make it seem like a place they belong. Those communities are hard to build, but they're not impossible. You just do it a little bit at a time. So that's what I've seen.
With the new organization, and you've mentioned the new core faculty, do you feel like that really enhances the ability of the students to learn through the Honors College?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to pay off for them. They'll have more faculty accessible to them. Now they'll probably build a little bit onto that building, have a little more classrooms, so that will be a little more one package. Yeah, I do. I think they'll have more resources, especially for thesis because of that. That's a big deal. Just for consultation, for research fellowships, might be a little handier having that all there.
Since it's really been a part of your life since your fellowship back in undergraduate all the way up until now, do you feel like it's been a good addition to Ball State or a good piece for the past 60 years?
Oh, you bet. I recommend all the scientists to do it if they can, because I think it enriches them, greatly. I have never looked on it as something that's anything other but a positive contribution to a student's life if they chose to be in that program. Over the last 60 years, it's really played an important role for Ball State, and it will continue to do that. It's a relatively unique program in the scheme of honors programs, and I like that about it. I like that it's for the whole university. It's not just a departmental program where you just get harder classes or whatnot. It has a better overarching plan to influence students, and just from my personal wishes, if they can weave that little bit more of the science structure in there and make it more accepted, or more embrace it a little bit more. Doesn't have to be much. Because when they embrace it, the students will embrace it, and all these smart people need to know about science, not from doing it, not because they'll do it, but because they're going to have to understand the difference between truth and untruths. What's reasonable and unreasonable. What's the way to make a decision and not make a decision. That makes a strong society.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to bring up?
Trying to think if there is.
Whether it be a faculty member or a former dean you want to talk more about, or have you seen maybe the deans that have been through the Honors College, if they've played an important role?
Well, certainly Dr. Vanderhill did. And he's a great fellow too, an important icon at Ball State. He's the only, he got to be provost, and he's the only provost I knew who would know everybody's name, every faculty's name, walking across the lawn of the quad. He may never have met you, but he knows your name. I don't understand how he did that. And he would also do business while you're walking across the lawn. I saw him do business with the chair once, going, well, yes, you're going to get that new position. We need one. You'll get it. It's like, boom. So anyway, kind of an interesting fellow. And so I'm just glad that I've had that opportunity, especially to serve as an associate dean for a couple years, and that was really an opportunity that I, was lucky to fall in my lap, and not a great way for it to fall in my lap, but I'm happy that I could be of assistance and meet all the cool students that I've met and staff at the Honors College.
Do you feel like you've been your time, your career has been enhanced by those few years?
Oh yeah. Well, unfortunately, you know, I'm late enough in my career that it won't send me anywhere, but that doesn't matter. It was a perfect time for me to be there, and one that I'll cherish. So.
And then, is there anything else you can think of that you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
All right. So with that, we'll bring our interview to an end. On behalf of the Ball State University Honors College Oral History Project, I want to thank you, Dr. Lang, for participating in our project.
You're welcome.